Most presidents leave the White House with some big accomplishments under their belt. Historic moments that'll fill books and museums for the rest of time. Like JFK deploying a wall of warships around Cuba to blockade the Russians during the missile crisis. Or Richard Nixon presiding over Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin plunging the American flag into the surface of the moon.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Yes, indeed. They've got the flag up now, and you can see the stars and stripes on the lunar surface.
We all remember George Bush rallying the nation after 9/11 on a pile of rubble in Lower Manhattan.
I can hear you. The rest of the world hears you. And the people who knock these buildings down will hear all of us soon.
Every president has signature moments that define their terms. But there's one president who doesn't have much to brag about. He's only 2 years into his presidency, but is there a moment that Joe Biden is going to be remembered for? The botched withdrawal from Afghanistan historically is probably the one thing so far that's seared into the nation's memory. And that falling off of his bike. And don't tell me it's Biden strolling through Ukraine with fake air raid sirens. That's just a proxy war. But the binder has already cemented Joe's legacy for us. She knows what her boss will go down in history for. The old straight white male's legacy is diversity.
You've heard this from the president, you've heard this from me, you've heard this from many of us here. Diversity and representation is really important to this president. I want to take the opportunity to lay out how diverse the president's cabinet has been, how diverse the president's administration has been. The cabinet is majority people of color for the first time in history. The cabinet is majority female for the first time in history. A majority of White House senior staff identify as female. 40% of White House senior staff identify as part of the racially diverse communities. And a record 7 assistants to the president are openly LGBTQ+. So again, this is something that the president prides himself on.
Diversity is fine by me. Racial, gender, sexual, whatever. I don't care what you are or how you identify, as long as you can get the job done. And that's the problem. The Biden administration isn't getting the job done. It seems like during the hiring process, looks at your picture and your pronouns, and that's more important than your talent and experience. Black, gay, woman, trans. If you shatter a ceiling, you have a job at the White House. When you hire people and you make their identity more important than their qualifications, you don't get the most competent people. But that might not be their goal. The Biden White House doesn't seem like they're trying to hire the best and the brightest. They're trying to hire the most diverse and representative. And when their identity gets them the job and their identity protects them from legit criticism, you can appoint whoever you want. You can appoint ideologues, patsies, loyalists, yes men and women, as long as they're diverse. Are there black, gay, Hispanic females who are qualified to work at the top levels of the government? Of course. But that's not who was hired in this administration. Biden's making diversity look like a bad thing because his picks aren't delivering. And people are starting to realize it doesn't matter what you look like. Our players, our best ones, aren't out on the field. Look at the vice president. She called Joe Biden a racist, didn't get a single vote in the primary, and flamed out after burning through tons of cash and staff. But Biden boxed himself in and promised to pick the first black female VP. Was she really the best option? Was she even the best black female option?
I like to think about a lot of things in the context of a Venn diagram. I love Venn diagrams. Always ask, is there a Venn diagram for this? I'm telling you, it's fascinating when you do. So Venn diagram, those 3 circles, right? So on this, the intersection between climate, extreme climate, right, which is going to be about, that's going to be also an intersection with human behaviors about greenhouse gas emissions.
What about Sticky Sammy? Joe's old nuke guru. Joe didn't pick him, to be fair, but we know why he's there. There wasn't anybody in America more qualified than a transgender sadomasochist thief. But Sammy went by they, so they didn't vet him. And now nobody can find their luggage. The Biden team just saw sticky stilettos and said, hey, here's the nuke codes, kid. You start next week. And then you have Binder. She's the first press secretary who's a black lesbian. I guess I'll clap for that. Way to go. But afterwards, I'm done clapping and I'm done being proud of her. Then what? Her job is to communicate, and she can't communicate. Is the LGBTQ plus community proud of Binder? She can't communicate. Are they proud?
The process is we are starting our process our protocol process on close contact. Our process, because as we all stated, he is now positive. We are doing our process. This is a devastating just the draft of this that we learned about. So the board has never convened. It never convened, and the board is pausing in the sense that it will not convene.
You end up feeling sorry for her. But is that the point of appointing her press secretary? You appoint a glass shatterer who's bad at her job, but we can't attack her because she shatters? They say she's a victim. Biden's proud of appointing victims who can't do their jobs? And then there's Sneaky Pete. He was the mayor of a town near Notre Dame. That's it. That's all he was. But Mayor Pete was gay, so he shatters. But South Bend, Indiana, didn't really blossom under Mayor Pete.
His hometown South Bend Tribune wrote in 2018 of major issues with potholes. It's the worst that area repair shops can remember in well over 10 years, with lines of vehicles awaiting repair for pothole-related damages nearly every day.
So Biden hires the guy who couldn't fix potholes to run our trains, planes, roads, and ports. Why? Because he sounds smart and he shatters. But the minute Pete becomes secretary, our transportation systems fall apart. A toxic train wrecks an Ohio town. And 3 weeks later, Pete slips into Palestine at the crack of dawn, dressed as a trick-or-treater, just to say it's not his problem. But is there any way Biden's going to fire the guy? No. Is he going to resign? No.
The American public doesn't seem to be very confident in your ability to do your job. Will you be resigning anytime soon?
I'm not here for politics. I'm here to make sure the community can get what they need.
Will you apologize?
I want to be
Will you apologize for the response, for the slow response, taking your
probably
time?
One of the big things. Let's go in here and get away from it.
No apology?
So diversity can be a strength, but they're doing it all wrong. Instead of putting together a group of people who are diverse in experience, diverse in class, diverse in background, diverse in thought, the Biden White House picks people who look different but think and act the same. Hot Air says this, quote, Democrats will tell you that their diverse administration looks more like America than any previous one, which even by demographic standards is ridiculous. There are more transgendered people in the Biden administration than in the state of Idaho. Anybody working in the White House, almost by definition, is not an average Joe. Whatever their race or sexuality, they have more in common with each other than with any average person in the country. Drop Corinne Jean-Pierre into the south side of Chicago, and she would stick out like a sore thumb. Most of the Biden administration are just lawyers from the coasts who shatter. It's starting to look like a scam. Look how easy it is to exploit them. How do you think Minnie got away with stealing billions and buying elections? He was pumping money into Democrats' pockets with a woke sales pitch in order to kill crypto regulations.
Using your money and influence, and I think there's a question about whose money you were using, but to donate, for example, to the Democratic Party.
You know, my donations were mostly for pandemic prevention, and they were looking at primary elections where there were candidates who were outspoken in favor of doing things now to prevent the next pandemic. It's just a PR campaign, sort of masquerading as do-gooderism, and things like greenwashing are things which I think end up in a somewhat similar area.
Fair to say you participated in this?
Yeah, we all did.
We all did. Exactly. The millions Minnie said were for diversity and dolphins were really just bribes to buy the Senate and get regulators off his back. And once they were done with him, Minnie was thrown in the clink, and thanks for the midterms, I'll see you in 100 years. But here's the bottom line. The politicians work for us. We don't care what the public servants look like, as long as they're looking at us instead of themselves, as long as they serve us, because lately they're just serving themselves. They care more about diversity than they care about us. We don't care what your cabinet looks like, Joe Biden. We care about what we're paying your cabinet to do, which is serve the people. We pay your salaries. We're glad you shatter, but stop patting yourself on the back. We're the ones that need a hand.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.